Joe Gibson, and I'm, after time, 79 years old.
Okay, so you know about the project, and we'd like you to maybe speak a little bit about what it means to you to participate in this project, what you know about it, what it means to you.
You know, it means that future generations will know about that I was in it. If it helps, great. But it also lets my children know, my grandchildren and so on, that I was in it. Maybe a point of pride for them.
So what does that mean, that future generations know that you fought in the war? What do you think they can learn or benefit from it?
Maybe to stay clear of fighting in a war.
Yeah? So you would not, I guess, push young children to enter the army when they become of age?
Well, let's say it's not that I wouldn't want my kids to go in though, but it's up to them, and it depends on the circumstances. I mean, if we're in a war, that's important. Yeah, I would expect them to protect their country.
So it depends on
But,
what they're fighting for.
right, like I don't believe in this war in Iraq. I don't believe we should have ever gone into Iraq. And I hate to think of all the kids that died over there.
So it is unfortunate that a lot of lives have been lost due to whatever motivation it may be, but something that's not necessarily accurate.
Yes,
And the Korean War was.
yes, I do. You know, when I hindsight, you can look back and you can see what's happened since then, and yes.
So what has happened that you...
Now it's turned out to be a great nation. Very productive and democratic.
Yeah. And do you feel that that's, I guess, a result of your presence and the military's presence in the country?
Yes, I do. They couldn't have won that war without us.
Yeah. So, I've asked this to some other veterans, and you might have caught the tail end of that last interview, but you clearly have opinions about how, entering a war. I'm wondering if you could maybe speak to how South Korea and North Korea have both developed since the war.
Well, we know before the war, North Korea was very productive. Their economy was way up. And South Korea had nothing. Now it's complete changed.
Yeah.
South Korea is one of the better economical countries in the world. And North Korea is nothing.
So they kind
The
of
people are starving, and
why did this happen?
you have to look at it that they're communists. Of course, us having things against them so that they can't do much makes a lot of difference, but it's their own fault because they're run by I consider a madman who doesn't know how to run a country. And I think he's all backed by generals that don't want to give up their power. And the thing is to me, the people that are in power would be in power anyway, even if it was under a democratic government, if they had gone for Democrat instead of democracy, instead of
Assuming that people approve.
right, because you got the same people. They're going to be up there.
Yeah. I guess taking. Let's go back to before you entered the war, what were you doing, and why did you decide, or were you drafted? Or
I came from a broken family. My mother left us when I was 3 years old. My brother was a year and a half. And she stuck us in this orphanage in Oswego. Was St. Francis Home. We were in there maybe 6 months, and my father took us out, and we lived with his sister for a couple years. And then she got tired of us. She was an old maid, and she got tired of us, so because we were pretty wild. So she put us back in the home, and then we were in there 3 years, and then we started to live with friends of his, and families. And so I was only waiting for one thing. That was to be 17 years old so I could join the Army, get out, and which I did. Day I was 17, I went down to enlistment and signed up for the Army. Then it took me till March 16th before I could get in, because they put me on a waiting list. I went in for physical and everything, but when I got done with the physical, I was top shape, so they put me right at the top of the list. Oh, it was March 16th before I finally got in. From there, I went down to Fort Knox, Kentucky, where I took my basic training, and then they sent me down to Fort Sam Houston for medical training. And when I finished the medical training, they put me in headquarters company where we put on demonstrations for nurses of combat conditions for out in the field. And I was there for almost a year when the Korean War started. And
You were there a year before it started?
yes, yeah, I was in Fort Sam a year before it started. And of course, then I put the demonstrations on for nurses that were taking, and warrant officers that were taking their basic training. And then the war started, so they didn't need that outfit anymore. They shipped us all overseas.
Yeah. Did you feel at home, like you were accepted into?
Well, oh yeah, you had something. Like my brother, I had an older brother. He was a year and a half older than me, and he went in before I did. Like he says, he got in, a friend of his talked him into going in. He says he got in there, and then he had a chance to get out if he wanted to. Something he told me about it, that for some reason they were offered a chance to go home. Well, his friend that talked him into going in with him went home, and he says, I wasn't going to go home. He says, I was getting 3 meals and place to stay. So he stayed. I stayed. In fact, I was in the same outfit he was in when he got discharged, just as I was going down there. Just before in fact, I was home on leave when he came home discharged from his 2 years. And like I say, I put about a year in when the war started, and then they, but in the meantime, he had rejoined the Air Force in April of '50. And he come down, we had some time together down Fort Sam Houston. He was in Lackland Air Force Base, which was outside of San Antonio. And then they sent him to, he got reassigned to Hill Air Force Base in Utah. And he arrived in Utah the day the war started.
So you probably didn't stay there too long.
No, he was there for over a year because I went up I got my orders to go to Korea. I didn't have the money or the time to get home and go back, go over. They gave us 10 days to get to Frisco to be shipped out.
So you
And
could pass through Utah on the way there.
I went to Utah and spent my about a week with him, and that was, we had one night out because he got in trouble. He only had one night we could spend out. So, and he had a buddy who had a car, and we went out.
How was that?
That was quite a night. His wife, he met his wife that day,
Really?
that night,
It's a
and his
special night.
buddy met his wife,
Wow.
and he was married 54 years. His wife died about 3 years ago. And and his buddy, he had died about 15 years ago. And they're still friends he's still friendly with his buddy's wife and her kids. And
That's great. I mean, it's important that.
but he went, I got back from Korea in October of 51. I think it was about November, December. He went over to Korea for a year. And in
You
the
guys were kind of
meantime,
following around.
yeah,
following each
and in
other
the
around.
meantime, my younger brother joined the service. But he joined the Army, and they sent him to Germany, so he missed out on the Korean War.
Did he miss out or did he get lucky?
He got lucky.
What was he doing in Germany?
I have no idea. I really didn't, we really didn't talk that much about
Yeah.
what he did in the service.
So, what did you know about the Korean War leading up to it? I mean, you were
Leading
there.
up to it, I didn't even know where Korea was.
Yeah.
I found out.
So you're
When
probably
I was
talking
there.
to your brother the night, that one night you're going out. You're like, I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah. He knew as much as I did about
Yeah.
Korea.
Yeah.
We knew that we were going over there.
So, what was it like? The days leading up to you leaving. Was it kind of a scary thought? I mean, you
Oh,
had
yeah.
been in the army, but you were doing
Yeah.
training.
Oh,
so-
yeah. It was, you were worried, We were getting the hell kicked out of us over in Korea. So, yeah, you're worried about what's going on. I don't know. It's a different kind of worry.
Yeah.
You're worried, but it's in the back of your mind. Well, it's back there. You know what you're going to be facing, although you really don't.
So it's kind of something. Yeah. So you know what's happening.
You're a
you
little
don't
bit
really
afraid of
know.
what's going to happen, but
And at the same time, you don't really want to think about it too much.
right.
So, then I assume you took a boat over to Korea.
No, I took an airplane
They
ride.
flew you over.
Yes.
I think
Hey.
you might be the first veteran that I've talked to that's had the opportunity to fly over.
We had a plane full of them. I was in Frisco probably about 4 or 5 days, and they sent us up Traffic Air Force Base, and we were up there 2 days, and then we got on the plane, and we were supposed to fly up to Alaska and over. Well, we got up, and one of the motors caught fire in the plane. So they had to land in Washington. We were in there 3 hours. And they had it all fixed, so then we got back on the plane and we had breakfast. I think it was in Alaska, Anchorage. I think it was in Anchorage. Then we flew after breakfast, we flew to Sitka, Alaska, to Aleutian Islands. This was nothing but a rock. You could see the whole thing when we landed. There was nothing on there.
And you're like, where are we going?
We landed and put us on a bus to take us up to have supper. And looking, all these barracks were all burned. I said, what happened? I said, well, these guys learned just before the Korean War started that they were going to close the base town. So they were happy was so happy they run around burning the place down. So anyway, we had breakfast, we had supper there, got back on the planes, and at midnight we landed in Tokyo.
And what month was this? What year?
This was in August of 50.
50, okay.
Well, then we had about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days in Japan. And next thing you know, we were on the train going across Japan. I think it was in Sasebo. They put us on a ship, and old Japanese ship, stunk, terrible ship. But it was just to take us over to Korea. And it was the end of August. I think it might have been 28th, 29th of August. We landed in Korea.
So what was it like, you're kind of going from one place to the other. Is it you're getting a little more scared at each place because you're getting closer and
No,
closer to
I don't
Korea?
think, for some reason, you weren't any more scared. In fact, you had to be looking forward, at least in my view, you're looking at something different.
Yeah.
You're looking at the country,
Yeah.
or you're looking at the ocean. You're up in a plane looking down. So you really put out where you were going.
Yeah.
That you weren't, that part of it was out of it. Well, you were just enjoying what you.
Yeah.
I would have liked to gone to Japan when I first got away from basic training. But then I got a chance to go down to Fort Sam Houston, and that was a great place to work. I had a banker's hours.
9 to 5?
Well, just about. We'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, have breakfast, have round call. Then we'd go up and have breakfast and go. If we didn't have anything to do that day, first thing you know, we'd, just as soon as inspection was over, get out the cards and sit there and play pinochle all day, or whatever we wanted
That's
to do.
a nice life.
Oh, yeah. And come Friday, once a month, they'd hold a general inspection. So just as soon as the general inspection was over, we had Class A passes, then we could leave for the rest of the day. Oh, it was a great life.
Yeah.
And San Antonio is a great city. They had an awful lot going on down there.
Well, that life must have been kind of different from when you arrived in Korea.
I guess it was. From the time you're in Korea, then you're on duty 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's not the 9 to
No
5
stop.
job.
Nah,
You can't just fight until 5 o'clock
Right.
and say, all right, I'm off for the rest of the day.
that's it.
What was it like when you first got in country?
Well, we got off the ship and got right on a train. And they took us from Busan up to, I think it was Daeju. That was right when we were in the Busan perimeter then. And I was in my company for about 2 weeks. They were just more or less training us for what to expect, because we knew we were going to be up in the frontline troops. Like I always remember one time, one question a guy asked. He was going, he says, if you hear any shooting, the lieutenant says, if you hear shooting, he says, jump in a ditch. And one guy says, well, what if there isn't a ditch? He says, there'll be a ditch. Well, when they sent me up to my company, I was in the company a couple of days, and we moved up. Next day, we were to cross the Nakdong River, attacked them. Now, next day I woke up. We went to sleep that night in a yard there. And it woke us up. In the morning, and we walking along this road, and all of a sudden bullets started flying all over. And I looked up, found myself in a ditch, looking up.
So you didn't even think, you just found the ditch.
Yeah, it was right alongside the road, but you never notice it until you're
Yeah.
looking out of it and thinking about what the lieutenant had said.
Right.
But, yeah, we ran down the beach and they ordered us down this road, and we were right alongside the river and down on the beach. I can remember running across, I forget how long, about a football field or longer to get to the river. It was all sandy. All of a sudden, everybody hit the dirt. And I looked up and I could see little holes going in the sand where bullets were going right in front of me.
Was that your first experience in
That was the first experience. Then I got up and said, okay, come on. When it stopped for a couple minutes, we ran towards the boats. They had these boats there, the engineers, and just as I could get to the boat, there was a guy laying on the side, and I reached down he says, forget him, he's dead. So I got in the boat, everybody piled in with me, and we had to roll to the other side of the river. Didn't matter whether they were shooting or what, you just kept rolling. Then that was my first experience.
Did you see anyone get shot?
Not that I can actually, I see, I took care of people that were shot, but to actually see them get shot at that, no,
So what was that first experience like then? I mean, I guess you weren't expecting it, you weren't even preparing because you were just...
No, you're never prepared for something like that until it happens. I mean, they can get you all prepared, but you don't get it until it actually happens to you.
You don't know how you're going to react.
You're not going to react. You don't know how you're going to react or what you do. I can remember that, a couple of days before I left, before we got in, I had to go back to collecting company and rode back with the liturgy driver and his guy with him. And I was thinking, when I got over there, I was thinking, boy, I'd like to be with that, like to have his job. Yeah, until I found out that he got his head blown off that night, that day, and down on the beach, taking the wounded back.
So you rescinded that?
He was, when I seen him, we drove back in the Jeep to collecting, and I took care of what I was doing. When I got back, I don't think it was about an hour. He was so drunk he didn't know his own name. And, this was a few days before. A couple of days later, he's gone.
What's that? I mean...
That told me, didn't care where you were.
How does that affect you while you're over there?
Yeah, anytime somebody dies, or you get hurt real bad, it affects you. I was always nervous anyway, but...
Did you have pretty close friends that...
I had one that I liked. He was, when I met him, he had asked me where I was from and in my company, in my platoon that I was attached to. And we got talking. He asked me where I was from, and I told him Oswego. And he says, you got the Oswego Sony Oswego College there with the industrial arts thing. I says, yeah. He says, that's where he wanted to go. And he says, that's one of the best in the country. And he says, I want to go there when I get out of this. Yeah. About 7 months later, we moved in this outfit, we moved up on this hill one time, the front line, and we all went to bed. Well, we all went in our,
Intense.
not our tents, our sleeping bags. And next morning, you wake up and just getting up and somebody hollered medic. Went over. He was dead. To this day, I don't know what killed him.
Really?
I just got him in a litter and got him back to, took him down to the litter jeep and they took him away and that brought me because he was such a nice person.
And he told you about his aspirations, what he wanted
Yeah.
to do after life, or after the war. So does that kind of,
Things like that, they don't stay with you too long. They're there and then they're gone.
as a medic though, I mean, since you must have seen these types of things a lot, maybe you became a little...
Oh, yeah. Oh, you become a little hard on them.
Yeah.
I had 15 Korean litter bearers that were there just for me to, for when somebody gets wounded or something, and they took real good care of me.
How so?
You know, we'd move into a village, and then they'd come up and, come here, come here. So I go with them. Sit down. They'd have me on a porch, and they'd bring out some old mammy-san,
What's that?
a woman, an older woman. And she'd have a bowl, you know, like this, full of rice and meat. I didn't know what the meat was, but it was good. Could have been rat, could have been dog.
Whatever it was. Yeah.
Oh, whatever it was good. And they always treated me good.
That's nice.
They,
So,
and if somebody was one of their South Koreans or North Korean, when we were up there, one of the civilians had something wrong with them, they'd always get me to look at them.
so maybe is that why they probably treated you so well, because
Yeah,
you were helping them out as well, or?
yeah, I was helping their country.
Yeah. So not only were you helping the country, but you were more on a personal level.
Oh yeah, you get real personal with them, you know. They were off different ages too. We had one older fella, and from there on down to maybe one about 18, 17, somewhere in there.
I assume you haven't had a chance to keep in touch with them.
No, before I left there, of course, when I left there, I was back in collecting maybe 3 to 4 months before I went home. And I ran into a sergeant there one time, and I asked him what had happened to him. I guess they just separated. Some of them went home and never came back, and
They had enough of it, I guess.
yeah, they just got tired of it. Of course, they weren't getting anything out of it. They weren't getting paid or anything.
Oh, they weren't?
They were
So I
in
thought
this.
some of them
They
were
were in the
getting paid.
government service, and as far as I know, they never got paid. They ate with us, and
They got food, I guess.
Yeah.
So did you learn anything from them in particular?
probably dirty words.
That's the first thing that you learn.
Yes, it's it's a fact of life. Yeah, whatever I wanted to know, they always helped me there. They were there for me. Oh, and I took care of them.
Yeah. So you did, I mean, clearly you were closer to the American soldiers, but you do have this kind of different relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a relationship with them, and
What about other, I mean, Korean Army or KSC or foreign troops?
we didn't intermix with the others. We did the Colombians had a brigade or something over there with it, and they were attached to us. I remember when I came back in collecting company, they would come back with us. They would come to us for any medical treatment. In fact, one come back one time, husky, short but husky, and he went in there, the doctor looked at him one time, told me, he says, give him a shot in the butt. I said, okay. Why? Took him in, give him a shot in the butt, went bing, bing. Went in about just less than a fraction of an inch, and it just bent my needle. So I got another needle, give him a crack, and bang! It was, and I said, uh-oh.
Was it all muscle or something? Or what?
I don't know. It was tougher than that wall there. I couldn't do it, so I said, well, sorry, Doc, I'm giving it to him. Doc wasn't there. And, I gave it to him in the arm. I said, I'd never get it in that fanny. But they were all okay with us. They seemed a very exaggerated people.
Yeah. That's interesting because in a prior interview, one of the veterans was explaining how they were told to stay away from the Colombian attachment.
Yeah, well, we couldn't very well stay away from them if they. In fact, we had a. What was it? What's that game they play on the beach? Volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a volleyball game with them.
Oh, yeah.
Our company and their
Did you-
things.
Did you represent America well?
I don't remember. We won. We won. Yeah, I remember that. We won because they would exaggerate their moves, and we just beat the hell out of them for.
Yeah. That's fun.
Those
Things like
but
that.
we
that kinda,
we just enjoy it. It was
yeah, you
enjoyable.
gotta enjoy those things because
Right.
if you're on the front line, especially you seeing all these difficult situations, it must have been a relief to kind of step back.
Oh yeah. You took your fun when you had it. You've seen. I can tell you since you've ever watched MASH.
I've seen some episodes, but I can't say I'm a.
One episode they had where they got up, where the officers got drunk, got up and shot out their tents and thing. Well, that actually happened in our our first aid. We had not the collecting, but the company. The collecting's back here, and then they have a small outfit that goes in front, where the doctor and they will have a doctor and thing. I can't think of. My mind goes blank at times, but it's like a first aid station where when I I send them back to them, then they send them back to collecting. They give them the first aid, then they send the collecting. Collecting does what they can for them, then they go back to a hospital or whatever. But yeah, that first aid, every month they would get so many gallons of 190 proof alcohol. Well, if you cut that,
It's not meant for drinking.
yeah, if you cut that with grapefruit juice or some juice, it's great. Well,
That'll definitely take away your senses from the war.
right, they get drunk. They got drunk one time. They get drunk with it every month. But they got drunk one time and got out and shot up their tent. And
Why? So what's the motivation to shoot your tent up?
you're drunk.
Just because.
It's
Yeah.
just one of those things.
Yeah.
One other experience I will tell you about is when I got back, when they finally took me back to collecting. I was up in the line. I came back one time to get stuff, and there's one lieutenant that I was with when I was when I was in the States. He was my sergeant. When I got over to Korea, he was already there, and they had already made him a Battlefield, giving him Battlefield commissioner, and he was the lieutenant. So he always looked out for me. He kept telling me, I don't come back here enough. He says, you get promoted if you come back. And he says, I mention your name every once in a while, and they don't even know who you are. Oh, anyway, I went back and to get some stuff, and I got ready and went around seeing friends of mine. Then I got ready, hey, I need a Jeep to get back to company. He says, no, you're not going back. He says, you're staying here. He says, we've sent a replacement up to take your spots. Oh, I was back there, probably about a week. When I ran into George.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah.
I like this story.
Yeah, now George is this one, George Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
This is, oh boy. Yeah, I'm lucky I know this guy's name.
That's you.
Yeah. But anyway, I ran into George. We were traveling, moving from one place to another. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, somebody hollered, hey, Gibson. And I looked around. I knew the voice right away because I had lived with his aunt and uncle and his cousins. And I seen George. And
so this is George in the middle. This is you.
yeah. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I was always riding on his trucks. You never knew it. We just never,
You're passing each other.
whenever they'd get trucks right, we had to move and we could get on a truck. They'd put us on the trucks and move. He was in the artillery. And, oh, cripes, it kills me again.
They forget his name.
But anyway, he showed up a few days later. Yeah. And he brought, oh, cripes, with him.
Okay.
Yeah. And took our pictures and sent us home.
So you've known George
I knew him all my life.
all your life.
My father and his father were great friends.
Mm-hmm.
And
You knew
hell,
you were
I lived next to him just before he joined the Army.
It's a small world.
And we talked about it. But he's a year older. He was a year older than me. Mm-hmm. So I was hoping he'd stay another year and go with me. But he went in before I did, so.
And did he make it out?
Yeah, he put over 20 years in the service. In fact, he put a couple tours of duty in Vietnam, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. But then he turned out to be an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. After he got out, he tried to quit drinking, but couldn't. Yeah. His daughter-in-law told me, he says, well, at least a couple times he had gone. He says he'd be in tears because just after get back to drinking and finally killed him. Mm. And the other fella, he got out after his first year. He went on the boats. And when he retired, he put one check in and died right after that. Got one check from Social Security and died. An alcoholic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess, the experiences in the world will take its toll on you.
Oh, yeah. But, but just before I met, I'd seen George, and then it was either that night or the next night. They woke us up, told us to get on the line. We're along this bank for, in the hills back there with the rice paddy thing in front of us was dried in May. It was in May. And the Chinese had broken through all along the line. Oh, they come at us. Oh, we had a hell of a battle. Mm-hmm. I was in charge of a ward tent. I was on the line. We had 17 people in that ward tent, 17 patients. Yeah. They just told them to stay right there, and Oh, we went probably from here to that wall there, from where our thing was. And all hell, when they came down off that hill, all hell broke loose. I don't know how many we killed. We captured 300 of them.
Really? So there's a lot of
And
them.
I think the only one that was killed was our priest, the Catholic priest. They went over and woke him in his tent. He was coming back, and then he remembered he didn't have communion with him. So he went back to get it, and he got killed. But they, next morning they looked, and that ward tent was like a sieve. It had so many holes in it from the bullets.
So it's really close to the line then.
And, oh yeah, and General, I forget which general it was, came up that day. And he looked at that tent.
So let's move back.
You'll have a new tent.
Yeah.
Within a week, we had a brand new tent. And not one person in that tent that was in there, all those patients laying on those litters, not one of them got hurt.
That's lucky.
Yeah,
Maybe the priest left something before he died.
could be.
So would you say that might have been one of the most difficult experiences of the war?
Yes, it was. It was it was probably one of the scariest.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were medics.
But you're
We-
there.
Yeah, we always carry, like I had a carbine with me all the time. I got a couple, I had a 30-round clip, and I carried two of them. You put one on, you tape the other. So one empties, you just turn it around, pull it out, switch it around, and put it in. Because you had 15 or 30-round clips, and had two 30-round clips, and they gave us, we got a presidential unit citation for being in Korea while anyone who was in Korea while we were at the Pusan perimeter. And so they gave us, for that battle, they gave us the cluster. In other words, it was the same thing as getting another one for another presidential unit citation for
Well, you saw some
that
pretty-
battle.
You saw some pretty.
And his name was Chuck Coyer.
You found you remember.
Yes, I remember this thing.
How did you pull that out in the middle?
I don't know, it just come to me. Not the friends you meet, the people you meet,
So
knowing that we came out on top, that we had stopped. We'd stopped an army that was more than twice our size.
it sounds like it was giving you a pretty hard time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went from, like I say, when I landed in Pusan. Then after we crossed the Nakdong River, we just kept going on up. And I got as far as 14 miles from the Chinese border. And they told us, I think it was early in November or late in October. And they told us the next day the war would be over because we were going to go those 14 miles and we would be at the river, right across, we'd have the bridge in our hands then. And then so that night we slept in a ditch that was about 6 foot, at least 6 to 7 foot deep.
Cozy.
And probably at least 8 foot across. It was right across the thing. And that night at 3 o'clock in the morning, they woke us up. Get on I ended up on a tank. We were bugging out. The Chinese had entered the war, and they were just 2 miles down the road. We were only a battalion
So
or
you had to get out of
regiment, so,
Yeah.
yeah, we had to get out of there because we were just going up the road. The North Korean army had just gone kaput. Oh. I never realized how bad it was till years later. In fact, just a couple of years ago when I read a book on some of our troops got trapped in and got shot up. When I was on the last tank leaving there, and it was, like I say, it was about the 1st November, and you'd get on the tank and it was cold. We had snowbacks, shoe backs, and they were rubber, and you'd get on this heater on the tank, hotter than hell, and you get on there to get warm. The first thing you know, your boots would start getting hot.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to get off.
To get off into the cold again.
Get cold again, then you get back on. We're going down the road. Like I said, we were the last tank. And come to this one bridge that was blown out, so they'd go around right up the river. The river was dry. So you crossed the river and up the other side. It was a narrow river. Oh, the third tank, or I was in the last tank. The second tank in front of us went down right to its turret in mud going across.
That's what I was just wondering.
So the tank in front of us went around and hooked on.
Pulled it out?
And he tried to pull it out and couldn't. So then we had to go around and get on, hook on. And we pulled him out. But in the meantime, everybody else had left us.
Yeah.
They didn't wait for us.
Right.
Oh, then we had to catch up to them. But
So you got out of there.
we got out of there. We went back, and I remember we made one more pass up, and then they took us back, and we went right back.
So you mentioned, one of the happiest moments of the war were the relationships that you met.
Yes.
You had. So you mentioned some of the Koreans
Right
that,
there.
and some of your buddies right there, Greg and Chuck, right?
Yeah.
So, do you have any other stories about any particular relationship you'd like to talk about?
Not really, like I say, I knew a few guys that I came over there with. Like the one lieutenant, he was my sergeant, and I had 2 other guys that I can remember that I went over there with. One guy was okay, the other guy was a little.
Yeah. So
I went back. I was supposed to go back in October. I was supposed to go back to the States. I was supposed to go back in September.
even earlier.
And then when it was my turn to go back, I had all things planned. My brother was coming from Utah with his wife back home, and I was going to be there. Then I was going to be there, so 3 of us all together. And then they'd come back with a different thing for different way of
Keeping you there.
of going home.
Yeah.
And so I got stuck with another month.
So when did you actually get a chance to go home?
Month from there, I left Korea, I think it was about the 4th of October. Oh,
So how did it feel when you got home?
great.
Don't hide it, yeah. Talk it.
Of course, it had been 2 years since I had been home.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, I had been from July of 49 till October of 52. Oh,
And were you discharged when you were home since you served
Yeah,
so long?
I went down, when I came back, they sent me back on the train to Indiantown Gap. And so then I went home on a 30-day leave. And then I took another 30-day leave because I had the time. Then I think it was just right after New Year's, I had to report to Camp Gordon, Georgia. And I was down there, and then in June of '52, they called me up, called me down to headquarters. Says, you're getting discharged. So I get down to headquarters, and I said, so what do you want? I said, I'm down here, I've been ordered down here to get discharged. You got another six months to a year. Because I had I was on my truant year then. When the war started, then they put another year on everybody who was in there. So you had, which we called the Truman year. So on top of our 3-year enlistment, you had to go on that year. So I says, okay. So I went back. I was working in the hospital as a ward master. And so I went back, and next week, called me up again. Go on down, you're getting discharged. Again?
Yeah, stop playing with me.
Yeah, so I get down there. Come on, you got months to go.
Again?
So I go back.
Wow.
Next week, same thing. Call me up again. This time, by
It was
June
this time.
June the 19th, 1952,
That's my dad's birthday.
I got discharged.
That's great. That's great. And that must have been kind of a long time coming, I guess.
Yes.
And so what happened immediately after?
Well,
You came back here?
yeah, I came back to Oswego and got myself a job.
Mm-hmm.
That's when my brother was over in Korea.
Yeah. So how did the war then, in your experience there, impact, the first few years and then throughout your life?
Well, it impacted me because I was really thinking if the war hadn't started, I would have stayed in for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, you got $600, which was a lot of money at that time, to enlist for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was considering it.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to get my 3 years in, then I was going to enlist for 6 more. That would have carried me up to 9 years, and I would have stayed in from that point on. Like a lot of guys I was with were World War II veterans, and they said that they were in there for 20 years, and some of them already had 10, 15 years in. They said they were out just as soon as they got,
Good. So they kind of
last
convinced you
enlistment.
not to do that then?
Yeah. The war convinced me not to
Yeah.
do that.
So what was it like then, you entered the Army because it kind of gave you a home, something that you didn't necessarily have before. How was that adjusting to life without the Army?
Well, I did have a family I was living with.
Mm-hmm.
When I was real young, they asked me to come and live with them.
Mm-hmm.
The father, a Polish fella. He was 10 years older than I was. His wife was 10 years older than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And they treated me like family. And,
That's great.
the rest of my life, in fact, I lived with them right up until I got married.
Mm-hmm.
And their daughter and son are just like my sister and brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like their daughter still sees me for birthday and Christmas, and
So,
every once in a while
that's great.
we go out for dinner, and
So you found something that you didn't necessarily have before.
yes,
You had someone to come home
I
to.
had a relationship too that I could come home to.
Mhm, mhm. So, how did your perspective on life change then, after coming home?
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt I was going to get married and settle down, and
Mm-hmm. And you did?
yeah, I was married for 14 years, and
Mm-hmm.
then got divorced, and
Mm-hmm. Did you get a chance to share your experiences with your family and friends when you were back?
not really. We didn't talk that much about it. In fact, I don't think that if you talk to my kids now, they wouldn't know half of what I told you. They probably know less than that.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully, that's one of the reasons that we're doing this project, so family.
Yeah,
do get a
my
chance.
son doesn't talk too much anyway. He's pretty quiet when he's around me. He's a good kid. He's 50 years old. He's works for the college and is a printer, and he's got his own videoing business. Was videoing these high school cheerleading competitions. He used to video the races down in Oswego. And he videoed weddings or what have you.
Well, hopefully he'll get a chance to see this interview and learn about your experiences.
Yeah, that'd be what he, probably mostly about what he's done. Every once in a while I might come out and say something to him about it, but not to sit down and really talk about it.
Yeah. So, since so much time has passed, almost 60 years, is there one particular memory that kind of sticks out?
Such as what?
Anything that maybe during the war, or you're talking about your relationships build. I don't know, one.
Well, I'll tell you, since I've left the Army, I really haven't run into anybody I know in the Army. I've gone to these reunions for my division. And, I just read in the paper, I just read in a book I get from the 24th, or division books. I just read where one of my friends that I went over to Korea with, he came back before I did because his name was Baker, a B instead of a G. Oh.
A couple letters. So what can you say about the legacy of Korean War veterans then?
We're getting old.
Yeah.
And we're getting less and less every year.
Well, that's why we're doing this. We need to capture that. And do you have, for your son, for instance, who might see this video, or for children in school that might be doing research on the Korean War, what can you say? What kind of message can you leave with them for us?
Stay away from war. If you can. Don't volunteer.
Unless it's a war that they believe in, right?
Right.
So
Don't believe a politician.
do their research.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Mr. Gibson, I think that ends our interview. Actually, do we have time for him to go through those pictures?
I give them a whole bunch of pictures. They're gonna,
Okay, so we can cover that
yeah.
later.
In fact, when I get back to the States, the guy was selling a pack of pictures. I think there was about 50 of them. And he wanted $5 for them. And I was looking through them, and I spotted this one picture. And I knew I was in that picture, but I couldn't find myself. So I bought the pictures, which I was going to do anyway, because they were all taken from all over. And it took me 2 days, but I found myself in that picture. I was fast. We were on this truck, and I knew everybody on the truck. They were in my outfit. So I says, I got to be on that. I found myself from here on up on the picture.
Nice, yeah, I recognize those eyes. Well, appreciate you coming.